generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN and also am the co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show with legendary Dave Johnson on Saturdays on Sirius XM.
Yeah, Dave is legendary. I'm Randy Moss see there? I'm wearing the logo, NBC Sports.
Zoe Cadman with First TV and Santa Anita. I am also wearing the logo here. Delighted to be here today.
Oh, I need some swag for my own. What was I? You should have told me. I would have done something. Could have had 3 people giving free advertisements for.
I just assumed you worked for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, you've got a Breeders' Cup logo there.
This is from the first Breeders' Cup at Del Mar. Yes. Okay. There you go. So, guys, this week we get the announcements out of both HISA and the Jockey Club about the equine fatality rate. And, this is one of the better news stories in racing, maybe even the best news story in racing over the last 4 or 5 years. Its numbers get better every single year. So for HISA, at their tracks, there were 0.90 fatalities per 1,000 starts. The Jockey Club, which does all tracks, there was 1.1 fatalities per 1,000 starts. That's down 44.5% since 2009 when they first came out with the equine injury database. But Randy, I thought the most pertinent thing out of all this information is how well the HISA tracks are doing compared to the non-HISA tracks are doing. So the HISA tracks are at 0.90, as I mentioned. The non-HISA tracks numbers almost double, 1.76 for the non-HISA tracks. That's something that cannot be ignored.
Oh, it's huge. We all know that horse racing's enemies have taken this whole horse safety thing and have used it as a baseball bat to beat the sport over the head. And that's one of the big accomplishments that HISA has had so far, to be able to whittle down those statistics to where now dirt is about as good as synthetic. A lot of that has to do with the way dirt racetracks are being maintained, improvements in track maintenance, but a lot of it has to do with just veterinary oversight. You see that in California as much as any place else. That's really where it all began, and it's now spread across the country. And when it first started, and Zoe can testify to this, in California, as you can imagine, there were a lot of trainers who didn't completely buy in, okay? Here are trainers who've dedicated their life to and have developed an incredible amount of expertise to be able to identify when their horses are doing well, when they're not doing well. And along comes a veterinarian that they may or may not even know, who decides suddenly, okay, your horse has to be scratched. Your horse is not ready to run. It causes a lot of hard feelings. But I think now that even those horsemen have seen the rate of fatalities drop as drastically as they have dropped and are continuing to drop under HISA, I think they understand. And you get a lot more buy-in now. You still get some hard feelings every now and then, but I think you get a lot more buy-in to what's going on than you had initially.
Absolutely. The horsemen have acquiesced. And a lot of the times that you'll see something or the veterinary team will see something, the horse will be sent for a scan, and most of the time something will pop up. And you won't see those horses work out or do anything for 30 or 60 days. So whichever way you spin it, it is working. A lot of people have said, well, what about all the scratches? And that was something that I noted in the article, that it basically said before they implemented the veterinary oversight, the scratches were 11.9% veterinary oversight scratches. Now they are 12.7. That's not really that big a difference as far as the scratches, 11.9 to 12.7. So it started basically here in Southern California, while the rest of the country just laughed at us and kind of stuck their noses up as like, oh, we can't go there. They're crazy. That'll never work. I said, well, be careful what you wish for, because it's spread across the country, and now virtually every track in the nation is doing it. And it's proven to be working. Love it or hate it, it has to be done.
Randy, you mentioned this, but I thought another remarkable figure out of there is, it was always dirt racing was the problem. Grass, pretty safe, Tapeta, synthetic, very safe. Dirt is where we're going to find most of these breakdowns occurring. in the Jockey Club database, the number for dirt, the equine fatalities per 1,000 starts was 1.18. On the synthetic, it was 1.02. By the way, turf was safest at 0.88. That's remarkable as well, because when this started out, Stupida/synthetic was much safer than dirt. And however they do it, and I guess it's some diligent trackmen who are really on top of things. But the fact that they've gotten the dirt tracks as safe as they are, that is another pretty big story.
And that's notable, I think, because everyone just assumed, and I think we did as well, that dirt was just inherently going to be a less safe surface by a large margin than synthetic or turf. And what we're seeing right now is that might not necessarily be the case. And there may even be room for improvement, because one thing that your article pointed out is that there is a slightly higher rate on dirt in locations where you have a lot of freeze thaw going on in the winter. And, maybe there are ways to look at that and mitigate some of the problems that causes. Maybe there's not anyway. But that's something I think that you might even see an improvement from that as well.
It's a very, very good article, Bill. I would implore people to read it. And it just goes to show you that when natural surfaces are maintained properly, that we can get such fantastic statistics.
Yeah, and also to me, the bottom line, look, everybody knows there's been a lot of problems with HISA. It got off to a little bit of a rocky start, the finding positives on people who couldn't possibly be cheating. So they gave you some reasons to not like them. But I don't know how all the people fighting HISA, how they can look at these statistics and not turn over and go to the other side. This is horse racing's number one problem, the equine fatalities and how the animal rights community reacts to it. And HISA / the tracks everybody working on is solving it. I don't see how you can be anti-HISA when this statistic alone is something that is very, very important to the future of horse racing.
Yeah, totally agree. Maybe Louisiana and Texas will come around.
Do want to remind you that the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Seems like it's the right place and the right time. Held on the closing day of the spring meet on April the 25th, the Keeneland April Selected Horses of Racing Age sale is a fitting finale and the prime opportunity to showcase proven racehorses and ready-to-run prospects. The deadline for entries into the in-print catalog is April the 1st, and supplements will be considered until the sale date. Enter now at keeneland.com/April. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
Go catching! Leslie's Rose, Sierra, Leone!
Mike, $5 million, thank you.
Spackler, a Mercy. She feels pretty. Hup!
This week's Fastest Horse of the Week is brought to you by Independence Hall, among those fast sires at Windstar Farm. Breaking news, one of Independence Hall's first 2-year-olds sold for a session-topping $1 million last week at OBS March. His sales average currently ranks third among first-crop stallions, behind only Maxfield and Charlatan. Independence Hall stands at Windstar alongside his sire, Constitution, for a fee of $7,500. Now, the Fastest Horse of the Week. There's a lot to unpack here. Booth, with his 107 Beyer speed figure, winning Saturday's Grade 3 Whitmore Stakes at 6 furlongs at Oaklawn. That 107 is the highest figure thus far for an older male sprinter in 2025, and it comes on the heels of his 105 Beyer in the Commodore Stakes at Oaklawn. He was ridden by Eric Asmussen, who rode, of course, for his father, Steve. It was Eric's first ever graded stakes victory. Booth is co-owned by Texans Bill and Corinne Heiligbro, who have a knack for finding fast sprinters. They also raced Booth's sire, champion sprinter Mitole. Next up, Booth will try to emulate his sire and win Oaklawn's Count Fleet Sprint Handicap on April 12th. The race Steve Asmussen has won 3 straight years and 6 times in all. One more note. A few years back, the Heilig Bros had another fast sprinter named Cowan, who was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, second in the Redeye Dirt Sprint. Cowan was named for Texas wildlife artist John Cowan, and that worked so well, the Heilig Bros went back to the well. Booth is named for another Texas wildlife artist, the late Herb Booth. Good to know he wasn't named for John Wilkes Booth.
Welcome in now, the Gainesway guest of the week. It's David Anderson, prominent breeder from Ontario, and he's got a lot to say about the tariffs that are being lobbied across the board and all sorts of products from all sorts of countries. But it is not something that horse racing has escaped. And David, for right now, it looks like what has been put in is going to be very difficult for Canadian breeders and owners, et cetera. Can you just give us sort of an overarching look at what the situation is?
Well, it's really right now clear as mud. I mean, we're trying to navigate it through the best we possibly can. There's different stories coming from the border of people that tried to cross the border on the initial day of the tariffs a couple weeks ago. We were told that we had a 30-day temporary permit or a temporary bond, where if we didn't have the horses back in Canada after 30 days, we would be charged a 25% tariff. I say we, as in the Canadian Thoroughbred Horse Society, the CTHS, we've been working with Tom Rooney at NTRA and their folks in Washington and their lobbying efforts, and Andy Barr's been a big help in Kentucky. But we've extended that temporary permit now to 1 year, is what our understanding is. So, which, given the breeding season right now is in full steam, that will allow us to be able to send our mares hopefully down to the States to breed, get them in full hopefully, and get them home before we're hit with a tariff. It's what we've also learned. It doesn't matter who owns the horse. It can be any owner. It's really what the country of origin is, or where that horse was born. So if it's a Canadian foaled horse, it's going to be subject to U.S. tariffs. And then we've also got the Canadian government, which is threatening retaliatory tariffs on the Canadian side of 25%. So any American-born horse would be subject to tariffs coming into Canada. So that's a whole other wrinkle. And we're working very hard on the Canadian side with our government, with politicians. We've put together a task group with all breeds, quite frankly, across Canada, because this is not only going to affect thoroughbreds and other race breeds like standardbreds and quarter horses, but there's show horses as well, and little kids' ponies going across the border. And I mean, it's opening up a real can of worms that no one really wants to see right now.
So you mentioned it's clear as mud. I think what we've seen so far is just wait a couple of days and then everything will do a, dramatic change in the tariffs, but who knows which direction it may change. You mentioned horses being sent to the United States to breed. What about horses in Canada being sent, for example, to Keeneland sales or maybe to Saratoga sales in the summer? What might that impact be?
Well, that's where the big impact comes in, Randy. I mean, when a horse is sold, whether it's transferred privately or publicly at auction, they're going to be subject to a tariff. If they're not in the United States by April 2nd, those horses selling at Saratoga or Phasic July or Keeneland September, they're all subject to 25%. So, I mean, I can tell you personally with my own horses, they're all on their way to Kentucky. I'm not going to risk a 25% tariff on my entire yearling crop. It'll just cripple my operation. All my profit is gone. and a lot of other Canadians are making the same arrangements. And people that aren't doing it, they're running the gauntlet. It could be crippling.
Dave, that's going to cost everyone money as well. And by the way, delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Zoe.
As always, good to see you.
You too.
But that's going to cost all these Canadians breeders money because they all have their home farms in Toronto or wherever. I mean, you don't have your own private farm down here. It means you've got to send horses to other farms. That's already going to cost you money. How's that going to happen?
Yeah, it happens so quickly. And, in this business, I don't have to tell you, as a breeder, it's years of incubation time to get these mares in foal and get live foals and get them to the sale. So to literally have to move your game plan overnight, it's unheard of. And it's going to cost people a lot of money. And, I have my own farm, like you said, in Canada, and all the infrastructure and lots of money invested, as do others. So, I mean, like all of us, we're hoping that something will happen on April 2nd and cooler heads will prevail, and this will all go away and everything will be merry again.
And Dave, how are they going to determine the value of these horses? I mean, these are not professional border agents. They don't know if a horse by Into Mischief is worth 100,000 or 2 million. How on earth are they going to figure that out?
Yeah, exactly. And, sadly, I think our industry, we're really just collateral damage for bigger issues, steel, aluminum, oil, gas, all the big ones. And how do you value a horse? I mean, like you said, just because a horse is by Into Mischief doesn't mean it doesn't have OCDs in the stifles and standing on 3 legs and it's worth $500. It's going to be a bit of a Kreskin routine at the border, and whether they're going to check values, how they check them, I don't know. These are the unknowns.
So you mentioned cooler heads. You're hoping cooler heads will prevail. I mean, we're hoping that down here too. But I think no matter which side of the political spectrum you're on, I think everyone could agree there aren't many cool heads down here right now, Dave. It's very chaotic. And maybe that's by design. Maybe it's supposed to be chaotic. I don't know. But you say you've been talking to Tom Rooney, the head of the NTRA. Are you getting any encouragement at all?
Absolutely everybody's on the same page here. Nobody wants this. Tom's been great. His whole team's been terrific. And, I've spoken with Shannon Arvin and Boyd Browning. Obviously, they have a lot to lose here. 36% of our Canadian bred horses are by U.S. sires, and most all of them go to the sales in Kentucky. So there's a big loss there. The stallion farms, I've spoken to all the major stallion farms. They're all supportive. I think last year we spent almost $10 million on stud fees. That'll be gone. The jockey club, we won't be registering horses in the US. There's no point. We just register in Canada and save the registration fee. That'll be $200,000-300,000 lost revenue for them. The Breeders' Cup, no one's going to nominate for Breeders' Cup. Then you got the boarding farms, the vets, the blacksmiths, the transportation companies. I mean, the trickle down, it's going to be tens and tens of millions of dollars lost revenue for Americans. And
Dave, can you give us an example of some of the revenue? Congrats with Moira, by the way, as you were a part owner, but she was sold at Fasig Tipton for $3.4 million. What kind of tariff would you have to pay on her?
I was 4.3.
Oh, sorry, I got my numbers.
Your dyslexia is kicking in. That's a figure I'll never forget, believe me.
So 25% would be $1 million.
Tariff would be over $1 million, Randy. Exactly. I mean,
wow.
Could you imagine? Yeah, it's real money. And, I look at my what I sold last year between my yearlings and other horses, I mean, it's crazy.
Dave, going forward, will you continue to breed to U.S. stallions, or might it just be easier to breed to Canadian horses and not have to go through all this? I know that no knock on the Ontario sires, but we know they don't compare favorably to the Kentucky sires. That's one easy way to do it. But are you going to knock heads with this thing and continue to breed to American stallions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in Canada, listen, we have a nice solid horses, and there's a market there for those horses in the Ontario Sire program and even out west. We haven't had to go after top quality horses because we've never encountered these obstacles before. Have we been given some time and know that this is going to be a permanent thing? I mean, yeah, we'll have to look at bringing in some better stallions. But again, if they're American stallions, we're going to be tariffed 25% bringing them into Canada. I personally, I have 11 mares to foal after April 2nd, and they're all booked to American stallions, Kentucky stallions. And 9 of those 11 mares are American bred. So they'll be able to go into the States duty free, but their foals at their side will be tariffed. And so, I'm going to run the gauntlet with those. I have the rest of my horses are all in Kentucky now. So I don't know. It's really a moving target. And President Trump, he's a wild card. And I appreciate many things he's doing. This particular case, I don't.
So we're focusing primarily here on the impact that this could have on breeders, on sales companies, which is understandable. I mean, it could be huge. Mark Casse has also come out and said that as a result of this, that if this goes through, then he will send fewer horses to race at Woodbine than he has in the past. Might this also have an impact on Woodbine itself?
Well, it's going to have a huge impact on Woodbine, and a claim is a transaction. So if an American horse comes up and runs in a claiming race and gets claimed, that importer is going to be hit with a 25% tariff on the Canadian side. So, nobody really was thinking about that one. Most of the races at Woodbine now are claiming races. In Mark's case, I mean, he's been a huge supporter of Canadian bred horses. He's strong at the sales. His ownership group, especially the last couple of years with DJ Stable, they've been strong buying horses and been very successful. Those Canadian horses are going to be able to come back to Canada, tariff-free, being Canadian horses. But any of his American horses, he's going to be subject to tariffs.
Dave, it seems like you Canadians are resilient up there in Ontario, because it seems like just a few years ago we were talking about the troubles of Woodbine and the horse racing was going down the pan. What's going on with Woodbine right now? And is there a contract that's yet to be signed with the meet coming up?
No. The short answer is no. The contract, the purse agreement with the HBPA, or our Horsemen's Group, expired at the end of the year. And we're a month away from hopefully starting, and we don't have a contract. And from what I'm told, the both parties are at loggerheads and literally walked away from the table. And it's very concerning. Very concerning. We haven't had a purse increase at Woodbine in a long time, and we faced a lot of cuts. And it's been disheartening as a breeder and an owner. And I feel at times that they just don't have the horsemen in mind. They're running a real estate company at the moment, and casinos and whatever else they're doing, but we need help. We need it now. And we're not getting it.
You're getting punished. Instead of getting help, you're getting punished by tariffs.
Yeah.
I know it's not funny. I'm laughing, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I'm playing one-on-one with Michael Jordan right now. This is...
What are the tariffs going to mean to your other businesses? Because you've got your hand in many pots, Percherons, Clydesdales. Does that affect them as well? Because you go backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It's going to help. We show all over North America with my draft horses, and it's a bit of a cottage industry, but it's fun. And it's, I always think of horse breed, no matter what you're in here, it's North America, Canadians, Americans, to me, it's no different. I don't differentiate. And this industry, the horse business, we're all in it because we're passionate. But we didn't go to school because it's a great business model. It's because we love the animal, and that's why we're in it. And we can make a little money along the way, then terrific. But there are no political or economic boundaries anywhere in the world. No political or economic borders. And you were allowed, we can go to Australia or Japan or, Europe and race and breed and have fun. And this isn't fun right now.
Well, Dave Anderson, thanks so much for joining us here on the Writers Room podcast. And we are rooting for you guys because this isn't just a Canada problem. It's just not a U.S. problem. It's a horse racing problem. And we all want to see it solved to take away all these potholes on the way to getting these horses in and out of Canada. So good luck with everything and keep up the good fight.
Well, thank you. And just thanks to everyone's support. It's been wonderful to see all the support of all our American friends, and we'll get through this.
Dave Anderson, our guest of the week, came to you courtesy of Gainesway. 3 years ago this weekend, Olympiad set a track record in the New Orleans Classic, running a mile and an eighth in 147.74 for a 111 Beyer speed figure. That was one of his 8 triple-digit Beyers during his career. In fact, 2 races later, Olympiad ran another 111 in winning the Stephen Fosters. So he was a Grade 1 winning multi-millionaire, a track and stakes record setter, and Olympiad's first yearlings sell this summer. He is standing at Gainesway for a fee of $35,000. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
Olympiad gets the gold in the Jockey Club Gold Cup.
450,000, 350,000, 325,000.
On this week's edition of First Things First, I caught up with the trainer of Lady Claypool, who has been 3 for 3 since teaming up with Brazilian jockey Tiago Pereira. Lady Claypool takes down the Grade 3 Santa Ana here with her trainer Richie Boltus. And Richie, she is just rattling off conditions like it's easy. Were you expecting such an easy win from her?
No. I mean, she has been getting good. She's been training at San Luis Rey Downs. They're doing a great job on her. And Tiago fits her. He just gets her to settle, and he saves ground. He's rode 3 perfect rides, and I got to give a lot of credit to him.
Certainly, that was an excellent ride. We're missing one member of the team from Abadanza Racing. Where is Bing Bush?
If he was here, you would know it. Actually, he's going to the Eagles concert in Vegas, so he was here today, but he had to catch a flight, so he's not here to celebrate.
Is there any truth to the rumor he was trying to get the race to go earlier so he could stay and watch?
I don't know if he called the racing office or what. But anyway, he's very enthusiastic. He's been a great owner, and congratulations to him.
Well done to you with Lady Claypool.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoe.
And I really, really do hoping that you had a great time at the Eagles concert. Well worth missing that graded stakes win. All right. Thanks very much to trainer Richie Boltus. Do join us this coming weekend. We have a 3-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday, the highlight event is the San Luis Rey. I'm really looking forward to that. One of my favorite races of the year. And it also Smorgasbord Saturday. All the best fried chicken vendors from across the country will be showing up and bringing their chicken. So coming out to Santa Anita, go to santaanita.com for more details.
Well, the big action this weekend will be at the fairgrounds, where the Louisiana Derby tops a really special card. It is their big day, filled with Derby preps and other major stakes races. And the Louisiana Derby, I don't know. I don't think this came up with a very strong field. John Hancock was scratched out of the Virginia Derby to run here. Flavian Pratt, Brad Cox, that horse has got to take some money, but he's slow. You have Wayne Lucas with Caldera. It's good to see Wayne Lucas in the fight in any of these prep races for the Derby. And then a horse that I'm kind of interested in is Instant Replay by Maximum Security, of all things. First start of the year last time out for Brad Cox. Ran a terrific race to win an allowance at Fairgrounds. His 92 buyer ties for the fastest buyer in the field. But Zoe, there's no one in this race that, jumps off the page or was, you would find in people's top 5 or so Kentucky Derby countdown. So somebody comes out of this, emerges with a lot of points, and we'll know more later. But I'm a little disappointed in this field.
Well, it's going to be a good betting race for sure. So I'm quite happy with it. Listen, I like Instant Replay, looks good in there. His bias speed figure jumps off the page. The one thing I'm going to note with this, it's laden with speed. Now, I don't know if we're going to see the same kind of thing that happened with Magnitude, that race was laden with speed in the Risen Star, because he was the speed of the speed and he just took off. So it could be the same thing, that one of these horses is just going to go crazy. Yinzer looks good in there, having just broken his maiden. The Joe Sharp runner, Furio, I thought, while he's a little lower on speed figures, I thought he ran a good race last time, and I believe that he can move forward. I know the connections of Furio, the son of McKinsey, really, really like this horse. So I'm going to try to look for a little bit of a price there with Furio. Randy, are you going to try and make some money with Chunk of Gold, who won't be 43-1 this time?
Actually, no. I mean, Chunk of Gold, he did get in a little bit of trouble last time turning for home, but he had a rail trip pretty much all the way on a day that it appeared that the rail was really, really fast. Okay. And when we talk about looking at this field, you mentioned Magnitude. When we say this field just kind of looks lackluster, so did the Risen Star going in, and then Magnitude, completely freaks and runs a 108 buyer. And it was Magnitude's race in the Risen Star that's why I like Built so much in this race. Built was the only horse in the Risen Star that really made any kind of a run at Magnitude. If you go back and you watch the Risen Star, Built had a nice little move there from about the 3/8 pole to the quarter pole and got right up on the flank of Magnitude turning for home. And then, of course, Magnitude just took off and left him behind. But I thought it was a really strong effort by Built in that race. And therefore, I think he's clearly, in my opinion, I think he's the horse to beat in here. There is a ton of early speed. That's going to be one of the hallmarks of this race. John Hancock has got to go from post position number 1 in a big field. And he went wire to wire last time in the Sam F. Davis. Yinzer has run his best recent races on the front end. Zoe mentioned Furio. So far, he looks like a one-dimensional front runner in his 3 races. So all those horses are going to be part of a really, really quick pace. And it's going to set up for a horse like Built. And Caldera, one thing to mention about Lucas. This horse should have won the Sunland Derby. He was absolutely the best horse. He didn't break all that sharply. They rushed him up. He gets caught 4 wide around the first turn. He hooks up with Getaway Car at the top of the stretch, actually goes past him a little bit in mid-stretch, and then got tired at the end, and Getaway Car comes back and beats him on the inside. But Caldera should have won that race, and he's in with a big shot here in the Louisiana Derby to give Coach a couple of Kentucky Derby potential starters.
Not
after
really
American
flattered.
Promise.
Yeah, not really flattered by Getaway Car running so poorly this past weekend, though.
True.
But I'll give you that. He's a big boy, a big boy.
All right, so let's see what the fillies are up to in the Fairgrounds Oaks. And unlike the Louisiana Derby, you have a real standout here. And that, of course, is Good Cheer. She has not only been winning, she's 5 for 5. And it's amazing. Only Brad Cox, he's so deep with this division, 3-year-old fillies. He had last year's 2-year-old filly champion, Immersive. She gets hurt. Now he still has the best 3-year-old filly in the country in Good Cheer. And he's got a couple others that are right up on the list. Zoe, this horse is not only winning, she is dominating every single time out. I can't be a wise guy and try to pick against her. She's that good.
And she doesn't need the lead. She could be on the lead. It seems like she can make her own trip. She's been really well handled by Brad Cox, because looking at her PPs initially, I'm like, 5 for 5. How can she keep this going? But she's only run once this year. We're in mid-March already. She won that lone start in February. So he's planned a really good campaign with Good Cheer, who arguably ran 4 times as a juvenile, which now seems a lot these days. So Good Cheer, definitely the one to beat in here. Cherie DeVoe has a filly in here that I think you need to take a look at. That. How do you say that? Ahava? A 4-year-old daughter of City of Light. I thought she was very impressive in her debut. Did just as much as she needed to do with running sneakily well from the 1 hole. She gets off the rail today, so I quite like her too.
She's a half-sister to Vava, the horse
right.
that Cherie DeVoe had.
Yeah.
It was more of a sprinter, but they think Ahava might have a little bit more distance in her. Okay, look, Good Cheer, when you look at the Kentucky Oaks future wager last week, she was the favorite, and then it was like a mile to the second horse individual wagering interest. So Good Cheer is clearly the number 1 horse right now among 3-year-old fillies as we sit here right now in mid-March, leading up to the Fairgrounds Oaks. But if you're looking to play against the favorite, okay, she's going to be 2 to 5. Her last race, remember all the scratches in the Rachel Alexander. It scratched down to a 4-horse field. Simply Joking came out. It was really the only tough competition. She was in, honestly, against a bunch of manes and tails in that race. She was 1 to 20 in the Rachel Alexander, and she got a rail trip to boot. Okay. The figure still wasn't all that great. It was an 89 Beyer speed figure, right? So she's definitely the horse to beat, but it's not like you're talking about Rachel Alexandra in here. I mean, she hasn't shown yet that she's, clearly like this runaway, in my opinion, talent in the 3-year-old filly division. So if you're looking to beat her, there are a couple of options. There is Her Laugh. Go back and watch the race that she ran in the Suncoast at Tampa. Absolutely, totally missed the start. Blew the start. She's last by 2 or 3 lengths leaving the starting gate. And so Irad Ortiz, she'd been a horse that had been close to the pace. Irad just decided to try to make lemonade, and he anchored her at the back of the field, didn't try to rush her at all, squeezed through in between horses at about the 3/16 pole, and finishes a nice second. She's a lot better than that race shows on paper. And then, I don't know if she's going to run in this race because they've double entered her. They've cross-entered her in a Louisiana bred race earlier. But I encourage you to go back to about October of 2024, if you have access to videos, and watch all the videos of this filly Secret Faith. I'm telling you, she is really good. She is a runner, and she has overcome some absolutely horrific rides in some of those wins. They changed jockeys to Florent Giroux for her last 2 starts. She's hooked up a couple of times in like an affirmed Aladar matchup against a horse of Steve Asmussen's named Blue Fire, who is a very talented filly in her own right, who's also entered in the other Louisiana bred stakes. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go. If I had Secret Faith, I would run her here because trust me, if she runs in this race, okay, Good Cheer's going to know that she's in there. She's that good. She may be a Louisiana bred, but she's got a lot of talent, and she's going to be what, 6-1, 8-1.
So is Randy trying too hard here?
No, I love that. Giving some love to the Labreds. Brilliant.
Okay, so that's the case in the Fairgrounds Oaks. Randy, will you actually, wager a few dollars against Good Cheer? You seem pretty confident in your opinions.
Well, I mean, look, if Secret Faith winds up being 6-1, 7-1 in this spot, look, I mean, she ran a couple of races back when she hooked up with that Blue Fire horse of Asmussen's. It was an 88 Beyer speed figure.
Right.
And she had a 3-wide trip. It was a 2-turn race at, I believe, Delta. And she was a little bit wide around both turns and still ran an 88. Good Cheer just has a rail trip in a 4-horse field in the Red Shell Alexandra and runs an 89. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. And she's going to try really hard.
We shall see. Okay, so the other highlight Saturday at the Fairgrounds is the return of Sierra Leone, last year's Breeders' Cup Classic winner. He was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia, but he came down with a foot abscess that knocked him out of that. I don't wish anything bad to happen to a horse, but I'm kind of glad to see him run. I'd like to see our horses run on our soil, especially really good ones like this. And I'm sure Chad Brown has mapped out a campaign from here that, we'll probably see this horse in 5 or 6 races between now and the Breeders' Cup. Yes, somewhat like Good Cheer, see if Randy wants to be a wise guy here again. I don't. I mean, this is the Breeders' Cup Classic winner running against largely grade 2 type horses. And I'm sure she's over her foot problem. Otherwise, Chad Brown wouldn't be racing her. Interesting first-time Lasix, because you can use Lasix in stakes races in Louisiana because it is not a HISA stake. So that's the reason why the horse goes on Lasix. Zoe, can they beat Sierra Leone?
We'll see. It depends how cranked up he's got him, because he's now 4 years old. He's a big horse. He's a beautiful looking son of Gunrunner. He should win this race. And the first time Lasix was really interesting, because I'm like, first time Lasix. And you look down, you're like, they're in Louisiana, of course. So that's definitely a big plus for me. So Sierra Leone is the horse to beat. The really interesting thing that I sought out when looking at this race, Sierra Leone is a son of Gunrunner, was sold at the Fasig-Tipton August sale for $2.3 million. Gainesway sold him. He was a beautiful horse. And then you have Hall of Fame, 4-year-old son of Gunrunner, sold at the same Fasig-Tipton sale for $1.4 million. Denali sold him. And I can remember looking at the pair of these, and we looked very hard at Sierra Leone, myself and Marette Farrell. And I went back to my catalog and had a look, and I looked at what I wrote down for Hall of Fame. I'm like, nice colt, love the Gunrunner. The other Gunrunner is better. And I just thought that was great. Yeah, I'm like, the other Gunrunner is better. And they're both good horses, but obviously Sierra Leone is proven Breeders' Cup Classic winner that he's been so far a better horse than Hall of Fame. So I thought that was very cool. But Hall of Fame's a very good horse. He trains at the fairgrounds. He's 2 for 2 at the fairgrounds. No, he's 3 for 5 at the fairgrounds and 2 for 2 this year. So he might well be Sierra Leone's biggest competition, and he has recency on his side as well.
Couldn't agree more. If you're going to take a shot against Sierra Leone, this is the race to do it. His first start as a 4-year-old, 1 1/8 as opposed to 1 1/4 in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he's a confirmed late runner. Doesn't have all the early speed in this race that he had to help set up his late kick in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Remember, that race had a supersonic early pace. And so, Hall of Fame. Wouldn't it be ironic if Coolmore beats itself and Hall of Fame winds up upsetting Sierra Leone in this race? And one other point I want to make about this race. If the fairgrounds, if Louisiana is not going to be a HISA track, okay, TOBA, the Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders Association, needs to step up. It's too late for now, but in the future, any stakes race, any graded stakes race in which the horses run with Lasix should have the grade stripped going forward. That should start in 2026. There's no excuse for this race, graded stakes, to be allowed to have every horse in the race on Lasix when other graded stakes races aren't.
Good point. I like that, Randy. Let's go to Turfway Park now, where this has got to be the first, I imagine, the first race in racing history with a purse of $777,000. That's kind of clever. It's the Jeff Ruby Stakes, of course. Jeff Ruby owns that chain of steakhouses. Again, it's a good betting race. There are some evenly matched horses. I would be shocked if the Kentucky Derby winner came out of this race. Even if it were, not only do you have the factor you're going from synthetic to dirt, but quite honestly, most of these horses in here just don't look like they have the ability to compete with the heavyweights of the division. I kind of like Baby Max for Kelsey Danner. Last time in the John Battaglia Memorial, California Burrito beat Baby Max, but went to the half in 49-2. And just kept going and hanging on and hanging on. Baby Max didn't come from the clouds, but he had to close into that very slow pace and only lost by a half a length. So I think the added distance of a mile from mile 16th to mile and 8th will help. And I just think he's going to get a better trip in here. But he can win by 50, and I'm not going to put him in my top 10 for the Derby. Sorry.
Come on, Bill. How can you not love a horse by the name of California Burrito?
Oh, that's a great name. Absolutely.
Son of Army Mule. I mean, it's a great name. I love California Burrito. I believe he's the horse to beat. He's probably going to be the speed of the speed. But I mean, are we talking speed here? We're going to go 24 and change, probably 49 to the half. Final Gambit to me was interesting for trainer Brad Cox, the son of Not This Time, out of the Tappet mare. I thought he broke his maiden stylishly, while not a massive bias speed figure. It was the way he did it that really perked my interest. The son that he's owned by Juddmonte. So I like Final Gambit in there. And Baby Max is okay.
All right. I love a trifecta in this spot. To be boxed, because it could go either way. And I'll give you a little bit different opinion about the pace. I think they go 23, 46 and change. There is a lot of speed in this race, namely Charlie's to Blame, who basically beat the gate when he won the Kitten's Joy at Gulfstream. He's a confirmed front runner. And Innovator from the Wayne Lucas barn is a one-way kind of horse who was part of that supersonic pace last time out in the Rebel. Couldn't make the lead and stopped to a walk. So they're going to have to go with him. And to me, I agree with you, Bill. That's going to compromise California Burrito because his trademark races, his wins and the allowance race in the Battaglia were on the front end in very slow fractions. Maybe he'll be just as good stalking, but I much prefer Baby Max to California Burrito for that very reason. So here's my trifecta. You got Baby Max, okay? If the pace is super fast, and I think it will be, Poster coming from well off the pace for Owen Hardy, third last time out behind was the two, John Hancock and Owen Almighty, in the Sam F. Davis. So he's going to be really running. And we know synthetic tends to favor late runners more than dirt does. Okay. And the third horse, this race in the past has been dominated by horses that either were coming off turf races or synthetic races. Okay. Flying Mohawk is a horse trained by Whit Beckman, who is very eye-catching wins on turf in each of his last two starts. If you go back and watch those races, you'll be very impressed. Jason Worth, there you go there, Zoe. Jason Worth is one of the co-owners of Flying Mohawk, and I think he's going to run a big race. And that's my trifecta box right there. Baby Max, Poster, and Flying Mohawk.
You're hedging. Come on, give us it straight.
Of the three, I think I prefer Baby Max, but I could see it going any of the three ways.
Okay. I can keep Baby Max on top then, per Randy.
TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, KHBA for short. This week, we are focusing on the stallion roster at Bonner Hill Farms, led by $1 million earner and multiple stakes winner, Pat on the Back. He's a son of Congrats, who raced for 5 seasons and actually broke his maiden as a 2-year-old at Saratoga. Pat on the Back's first crop to race included 2024 stakes-winning 2-year-old Fenton Forever. Pat on the Back stands for $3,500. Also at Bonner Hill, Jerome Stakes winner Capo Cane, the only son of Street Sant standing in the Mid-Atlantic. Capo Cane stands for $2,500, and you'll be able to see his first 2-year-olds run this year. breed to a PA sire and register that foal as a PA bred. And you'll be eligible not only for the restricted races and for the PA Sired Stallion series, but also the 40% in Breeders' Awards and up to 40% in owner bonuses. To learn more about this and take a look at the 2025 Stallion and Boarding Farm Directory, you can go online at pabred.com, or you can do it the old-fashioned way. Call 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in Breeders' Awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky Breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Breed and race in Kentucky, and you can win big in the Bluegrass. A record $20 million in awards is being distributed right now to breeders who participated in the Kentucky Thoroughbred Breeders Incentive Fund, the KBIF, for racing last year in 2024. That program began back in 2005, and since then, KBIF has provided more than $250 million. It sounds even better when you say it this way. $250 million to breeders of Kentucky breds winning eligible races worldwide. Kentucky's average purse, $104,000. Average field size, 8.9. It has 5 tracks. Continue to outpace all other leading racing jurisdictions, and it just keeps getting better. For the upcoming spring meet, Keeneland has increased the purses for 16 of its stakes races. They're now up to a total of $9.4 million in purses for their 19 stakes during the Keeneland Spring Meet, which runs April 4 through the 25th. Kentucky Breds, breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Well, kind of a quiet weekend last weekend so far as the Derby action and the road to the Kentucky Derby and Oaks goes, but they put on a special card at Colonial Downs. They ran 3 days. Laurel took the weekend off so that Colonial could have the spotlight all to itself. They moved the Virginia Derby and the Virginia Oaks from the late summer when they were turf races to this day and made them dirt races, preps for the Derby and the Oaks. They didn't get great fields by no stretch of the imagination, but I think this is a really smart move on the part of Churchill Downs because number one, on this weekend in the past there were not any Derby prep races, and this really I caught my attention. Have any of you guys been there to Colonial?
No,
I haven't either. It must be a really small facility because they sold out. 8,000. They only let 8,000 into the building and they sold out. So how often do you see that at a racetrack? So the story in the Virginia Derby was Wayne Lucas. Here's a horse, American Promise, who wins by 7 3/4 lengths. Wayne Lucas will be back in the Kentucky Derby where he's 4 for 51, hasn't won since 99 with Charismatic. This horse ran visually a very, very good race. But prior to that, he was 5th beaten, 13 in the Risen Star, 6th beaten, 6.5 in the Southwest. So the question, Zoe, is this horse really improved and is he that good? Or did he win by this margin because the rest of the competition was pretty weak?
it was a terrible race to watch visually. I don't know what kind of numbers they had, but they were strung out. And I mean, kudos to Virginia for holding the race there. And I love the fact that it was sold out and it was a quiet weekend. It's a really good idea. I'm glad that they managed to get, a Bob Baffert named horse there, Getaway Car, although, he laid an egg. He ran up the track. But he just galloped along. He's a big galloping, looking at the size of him and Getaway Car going down the backside. You got this giant horse up here. I'm like, oh my God, Getaway Car's not that small. But I don't know how big Wayne's horse is, but he looked like an elephant going down the backside and coming down the lane. And there's little Getaway Car just chugging along as fast as he could go. So visually, great. Kudos to the winner. Delighted to have D. Wayne. What is he, 89? I don't know.
Yep,
But I know
89.
a good friend of mine, 89, Anna James, that works for FanDuel, just sat down with him for an hour with Scott Hazelton doing a feature for FanDuel at his house in Hot Springs, Arkansas last weekend. I'm like, what do you have to cut that down to? She's like, I think I'm going to leave it as it is. She said, we talked about everything. She said it was just amazing to just sit there and listen to him go. So it'll be cool to have him on the Derby trail. Horse racing's all about stories. And he is one of the stories that I'm sure that NBC will be keying in on, Randy.
Oh, yeah. And if Caldera runs well, he might even have 2 in the Kentucky Derby. Now, American Promise, son of Justify, that's where he got his big size, right? 91 buyer speed figure. So I know Wayne would tell you that horses aren't numbers, but that tells me that he'll be 30 to 1 or higher probably when you roll down to the first Saturday in May. I think his big margin win had a lot to do with what turned out to be pretty weak competition. I was very surprised, though, that he was 7 to 1. Very surprised. Because you go back, I talked about Built making that run at magnitude in the Risen Star. Well, right behind Built when he made that run was American Promise. When they turned for home, it was Magnitude pulling away, Built in second, and American Promise trying his heart out in third. And when you see a horse disappear on the horizon like that, it's discouraging to another horse. And so American Promise just sort of, didn't really finish it out the last eighth of a mile, kind of like Built. But now he comes back against Getaway Car, who he is not a big horse. And he just came off a very strenuous head-to-head battle against Caldera at Sunland. Okay. He wasn't the best horse in that race. Caldera was the best horse. He got a clear lead in the Sunland Derby in fractions that by Sunland Park standards were not particularly fast. And American Promise was going to push him in the Virginia Derby. He had 2 workouts after the Sunland Derby that by Bob Baffert's standards were not particularly fast. I think he was kind of taking it easy on him. And to boot, he was an afterthought to run in that race. Gaming was supposed to run in the Virginia Derby. And when it came time to enter, Gaming had a fever. And so they just kind of threw in Getaway Car as a substitute. So all that meant that Getaway Car was a very good favorite to try to take a shot against. And I couldn't believe that American Promise actually went off at 7 to 1 in that race.
Virginia Oaks presented an interesting possibility. A horse by the name of Fondly, who had trained by Graham Motion. All she had done is broken her maiden coming into the race, but it was a very impressive victory. Matter of fact, they made her the favorite, which I was surprised off that one maiden win. And she gets the job done. She wins by a half length for Eclipse Thoroughbred. They bought her for only $50,000. Is she good enough to make the Oaks? Does she have enough time to make the Oaks? Those are all questions we'll find out later. It would be hard to take her off of just winning the Virginia Oaks by a half length. But at the same time, considering what she's done so early in her career, this is somebody I think that might have a future.
I agree with you. Oh, go ahead,
Really?
Randy. No,
go ahead.
I agree with you. You get Irad Ortiz to ride her. She's by Upstart, who stands for just $25,000. He, to me, is one of the most underrated sires. This is a homebred for Brereton Jones. Eclipse Thoroughbreds, everywhere we look, everywhere we talk, they're running horses in races and really, really starting to make a big splash. I mean, they've got good horses already, but just of late, everywhere you look, there's an Eclipse Thoroughbred horse running. So I thought it was a good race by Fondly. And one thing about Graham, he's a patient trainer. And he's not going to push her if he doesn't think she's ready.
Look, I love Aaron Wellman. I'm a big fan of Graham Motion. This was a horrible race.
Whoa.
It was a terrible race on paper and in real life. Buyer speed figure 70. This horse will be 50 to 1 if they decide to run her in the Kentucky Oaks. So I think it had a lot to do, the visually impressive win, with the fact that the horses that she was running against were not particularly fast.
Randy, you need to speak your opinion, speak your mind a little bit more. One thing that always sticks in my mind when I'm watching races like
the Virginia Derby and the Oaks, which weren't visually pleasing to the eye. I can remember years ago, John Dooley calls the races in New Orleans, and one of his favorite race calls of all times was on Mardi Gras Day one time, and he's calling the race, and he's like, and they're coming home. They're strung out like Bourbon Street regulars, and they were strung out down the lane. And I just thought it was so apropos. It was a really good call.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't leave at the G. John G. Dooley.
John G. Yeah.
The G's important.
So one more thing, let's not overlook what happened Friday at Colonial Downs. Bookham Dano is back. Three horse field, but actually they gave him a little bit of a fight in there. My pal, the Jersey bred. Randy, you need new favorite horses. All of your horses have retired.
I know. I love Bookham Dano.
But Bookham Dano won. They're not going to Dubai. They're looking probably to run maybe in the Churchill Downs Stakes on Derby Day. But it's good to see old Dano back, especially after he was a little bit flat in the Cigar Mile last time out. So way to go, Dano.
Yeah, I mean, I'm supposed to be opinionated. I'll give you an opinion. It's a hell of a race. It was a short field. They ran fast, visually impressive. He would have beaten the Virginia Oaks horses by about 25 lengths. But no, look, I mean, he's an easy horse to root for. I can't like him as much as you. I'm not from New Jersey, but still, I like him.
It was a good race. If you're going to have a 3-horse race, that was a good race.
Yeah.
Right. But it actually was. Yeah, it actually was a good race. All right.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by First TV. Now let's take a look at Baeza, a leading candidate for the Grade 1 Santa Anita Derby on April the 5th. He worked a sizzling, a blazing 6 furlongs in 1:10 and 2. That is wickedly fast. That's not even as quick as like Baffert time. That's quicker than Baffert time. That was amazing. Anyway, he's trained by John Sheriffs. He was joined in the workout by stablemate Bolt It Down, an unraced son of Bolt Doro, who worked in 46 and 2. Hector Berrios was aboard Baeza for the work, which was his third since his standout maiden win on February the 14th at Santa Anita. Berrios described the drill as super. Why wouldn't he? By McKinsey out of the big brown mare Puka, Baeza is a half-brother to 2023 Kentucky Derby winner Mage and 2024 Belmont Stakes winner Dornock. That was sizzling, guys.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
And our TDN Writers Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. West Point had a new TDN Rising Star Saturday at Colonial Downs. Lion of Justice won a maiden special weight by 6.5 lengths going a mile on the Virginia Derby undercard. A big margin win doesn't always mean a fast race, but this one was. Lion of Justice earned a 92 debut by her speed figure. Brad Cox trains that 3-year-old son of Into Mischief. Everyone wants Into Mischiefs, of course, and West Point added another one last week at the OBS sale of 2-year-olds in training. This colt is headed to Dale Romans and was one of West Point's 5 purchases. 4 of those are already fully subscribed in partnerships, but West Point does have some availability on a Charlatan filly who has been earmarked for trainer Cherie DeVoe. Details on that you can find at www.westpointtb.com.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. I want to thank my partners, Zoe Cadman and Randy Moss, as well as our guest of the week, our Gainesway guest of the week, David Anderson. Also our producers and our editors, Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. It's going to be a great weekend of racing, topped by the Louisiana Derby at the fairgrounds. Enjoy, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Look at Lucy. Sissy. She's so cute.